My dad said, real men don't cry over dogs. So I didn't cry when I put him in a nursing home. But I made sure his room overlooked the empty kennel he made me give away. I'm Nate, 35 years old, male, and I didn't cry when I put my dad in the nursing home. I didn't cry when I handed over his meds. I didn't cry when the intake nurse asked me what his favorite meals were, what his bedtime was, what kind of TV he liked. I didn't cry when I turned around and left him sitting in that beige room, staring out a window at the empty kennel behind the facility, the same one that used to be ours. I haven't cried in 24 years. Not since Max. Max was my dog. My whole world, really. He was this giant German shepherd mutt with one torn ear and a bark that could shake the siding off a house. He came into my life when I was 9. I found him at a gas station, ribs showing, paws bloody, tail wagging like I was the first good thing he'd seen in months. I took one look at him, and he looked back like he already knew my name. We were instant. My mom didn't want a dog. My dad, Ray, 61 years old now, said it could teach me responsibility if I trained it myself. What he really meant was, if it dies, it's your fault. Still, Max stayed. Through everything. Through my awkward middle school years when I had braces and no friends. Through the night my mom left and took all the dishes but none of the photos. Through the days Ray sat in the recliner with a beer in one hand and silence in the other. Max was my warm spot on the bed, my walking buddy, my therapist. I taught him to sit, stay, and even play dead on command. Sometimes he'd just lay his head in my lap like he was trying to say, I've got you. But when Max got old, hips going, tumors forming, Ray said he had to go, said he was a burden, said a real man doesn't waste time or money crying over a damn dog. And I was 11, so I listened. I was the one who put him in the back seat. I was the one who sat there while Ray drove us to the shelter. I was the one who handed Max off to a stranger and watched his tail wag until the door closed. And I didn't cry. Not even when I heard him barking as we walked away. Afterward, Ray tossed me a soda and said, toughen up, you're not a little boy anymore. And that was the end of it. I buried my tears with Max. It's weird how people talk about grief like a flood. For me, it calcified, solidified somewhere behind my ribs and made everything tight and dry. I got quieter, better at following rules. By high school, I could mow the lawn, patch drywall, cook meals, and keep Ray's beer fridge stocked without being asked. But something cracked when Ray got diagnosed last year. Parkinson's. Subtle at first, like a low battery you don't notice until the lights flicker. Shaky hands, slow speech, forgetfulness. He started losing things, slurring names, calling me by my uncle's name. One night, he got lost in our own backyard. The man who once said, don't ever cry in front of me, had to ask me how to tie his shoes. And I didn't cry. I scheduled his appointments. I took over his bills. I handled the house. I watched him fade into someone softer, sadder, and somehow more dangerous. He knocked over the stove once and nearly burned the kitchen down. He forgot to turn off the bathtub. I found him standing there, soaking wet, muttering about a dog he never let us keep. And that's when I started looking at homes. Homes with empty kennels out back. The day I toured the nursing home, I almost laughed when I saw the kennel. It was old, chain-link fencing, half-rusted, grass grown tall inside. The nurse said it used to be an adoption program. They let residents foster dogs until funding dried up. Now it just sat there, empty, a cage without a purpose. And something in me clicked. That was it. That was where I'd put him. I told myself it wasn't revenge. It was practicality. The facility was clean, had good reviews. Staff seemed decent. But the truth was, when I saw his room window lined up perfectly with the abandoned kennel, I felt something sharp settle inside me. Like the universe handed me a mirror. Ray used to sit in his recliner with the TV blasting and beer cans stacked on the table. I'd be doing homework on the floor, Max curled at my feet, and Ray would toss out little grenades. You're too soft. You care too much. Stop hugging that dog like it's a person. Real men don't cry over animals. He didn't mean just dogs. He meant everything. Don't cry at funerals. Don't cry when mom left. Don't cry when the bills stacked up and the heat shut off. Just shut it down and keep moving. So I did. But when his condition worsened, the house turned into a minefield. I came home from work one night and found every pot on the stove, burners lit, smoke curling up. He was in the garage, barefoot, staring at the old lawnmower like he couldn't remember what it was. When I tried to guide him back inside, he jerked away, furious. I don't need babysitting. You think I'm weak? You think I'm some damn burden? That word again. Burden. The same word he used for Max. We fought. Really fought, for the first time since I was a teenager. He shoved me. I shoved him back, harder than I meant to. He slipped, hit the wall, and suddenly I was the one picking him up off the floor. His eyes were wet. He'd never cried in front of me before. I didn't comfort him. I couldn't. That night, I made the call, scheduled the intake, packed his clothes, his shaving kit, the recliner remote he kept clutched like a lifeline. And the whole time I thought about Max, about how he wagged his tail even as I walked away. The day I dropped Dad off, he sat silent in the passenger seat. His hands trembled in his lap, but he didn't ask where we were going. When the nurse wheeled him to his new room, I stood back, watching his eyes drift to the window. He saw the kennel. His mouth moved like he wanted to say something, but no sound came out. And I didn't cry. I just said, "You'll be fine here." Then I turned and walked away. Don't forget to subscribe. The first week, I told myself I'd check in once, just to make sure he was eating, taking his meds, not setting anything on fire. When I walked into his room, he was in the chair by the window, eyes locked on that kennel like it was alive. He didn't even notice me at first, just muttered, "Should have put him down myself. Should have handled it." Max. He was talking about Max. After all these years, he remembered. When he finally turned, he looked at me like I'd betrayed him. "You left me here to rot." I kept my voice flat. "You're safe here." He slammed his fist on the table so hard his water cup flipped. "Don't you dare talk to me like one of those nurses. I'm your father. You don't abandon your blood." The noise drew a nurse in. She tried to calm him, but he grabbed the tray and flung it against the wall. Food splattered everywhere, mashed potatoes dripping down the paint. She gave me a look. "You deal with this." So I did. I got close, crouched low, spoke the way you'd talk to a cornered animal. "Dad, you're not safe at home anymore. This is the only way." He glared at me, voice breaking into a raw, jagged sound I'd never heard before. "You're weak, always were. Crybaby hiding behind that mutt. And now you're throwing me away, same as you threw him." I didn't answer. Just stood up and left him there, shaking. 2 days later, I got a call from the facility. He'd caused a scene in the dining hall, tried to flip a table when they told him no beer was allowed, accused the staff of poisoning his food, yelled loud enough that other residents started crying. When I came in, the head nurse pulled me aside. "If this continues, we'll have to transfer him to a more secure unit." I walked into his room, and there he was again, sitting at that damn window, staring at the kennel. Only this time, he'd taken the remote I brought him and smashed it against the radiator until the plastic splintered. "You set me up," he hissed. "You wanted me to see it, wanted me to suffer." I didn't deny it. Because maybe I did. A week later, I got the call I'd been dreading. "Mr. Harris, your father caused a disturbance. We need you to come immediately." When I arrived, the lobby was chaos. 2 orderlies had Ray pinned in a chair, and a police officer stood nearby, hand on his taser. Residents were peeking from the hallways, whispering. Staff were cleaning up broken glass from where he'd thrown a pitcher. The moment he saw me, he exploded. "There he is, the coward! My own son treating me like garbage! You see this?" He gestured at everyone watching. "This is what he does. Throws family away like dogs." The officer turned to me. "He's been shouting like this for an hour. Accused the staff of locking him up against his will. Tried to leave the building. We had to stop him." Ray spat on the floor. "You shut your mouth. I raised him with my bare hands. Fed him when his mother ran off. And this is how he pays me back. Dumps me like trash. Puts me in a cage so he can feel like a man." Every word hit like a hammer. Not because it was true, but because of the audience. Old women in wheelchairs, staring. Nurses murmuring. The officer eyeing me like maybe I had abandoned him. I wanted to sink through the floor. Instead, I walked over slowly, crouched so he'd have to look me in the eye. You're not in a cage, Dad. You're in a home. The only reason you're still safe is because I put you here. Wrong move. He lunged, hands clawing at my face, wild strength surging out of nowhere. The orderlies dragged him back, but not before his nails scraped down my cheek. It burned hot, blood welling. Max should have been mine, he screamed. Not yours. He was supposed to be my dog, not my son's crutch. You ruined him. You ruined me. The words froze the whole room. He'd never admitted that. Not once. Not in all these years. The officer shook his head, muttered something about filing an incident report, and left. The head nurse told me bluntly, "Next time, we'll have to move him to the memory care wing. He's a danger to himself and others." I nodded, still pressing a napkin to my cheek. And in that moment, I realized something. Ray wasn't just breaking down. He was unraveling, and he was determined to drag me with him. Don't forget to subscribe. Update. So, I didn't expect this story to blow up the way it did. Honestly, I thought maybe a handful of people would read it and shrug. Instead, I've been up half the night scrolling through comments, DMs, people sharing their own stories about dads like mine, dogs like Max. Some of you said I was too harsh, others said I was way too soft. One guy literally wrote, "You should have put him in a kennel instead." Dark, but not gonna lie, it made me laugh. A lot of you told me the scratch on my face, from when he lunged at me in the lobby, was symbolic. That hit me weirdly hard. I didn't even think of it that way until I looked in the mirror later. The red streak across my cheek looked like a reminder I couldn't wash off. To clear up a few things. No, my dad doesn't have full-blown dementia. Yet. It's Parkinson's with cognitive decline. He's still in there, which is what makes it worse. He remembers just enough to weaponize it. Yes, I chose that room on purpose. I didn't admit it outright before, but I'll own it now. I wanted him to see that kennel. I wanted him to feel even a sliver of what he made me feel when I was 11, standing outside the shelter listening to Max cry. No, I don't feel guilty about the home. I feel guilty about still wanting more. Because here's the thing. Watching him melt down in front of everyone, screaming about Max, clawing at me like an animal, it didn't feel like closure. It felt like the start of something, like the real reckoning hasn't even begun. Some of you told me revenge isn't worth it, that I should break the cycle and let him rot in peace. I get that. I really do. But when I walked out of that nursing home, blood still sticky on my face, I saw the kennel glowing under the floodlights like it was waiting for me. Like it wanted me to finish what I started. And I realized I'm not done yet. Not by a long shot. The next time I visited, I came prepared. Not with flowers. Not with snacks. With a box of old photos. When I walked into his room, he was pacing, well, shuffling, by the window, muttering about dogs that never listened. The nurse said he hadn't been eating again. She left us alone. I put the box on the table and slid it toward him. Thought you might want these. He opened the lid, hands shaking, and pulled out a photo. Me, 9 years old, gap-toothed, holding Max's leash. Max's ears perked, tongue out, pure joy. For a second, something flickered across Ray's face. Not softness, recognition. Then it twisted. "You think this makes you the better man?" he snapped, slamming the picture down. "All that dog did was make you weak. Turned you into some pathetic boy who needed a mutt to do his crying for him." I didn't flinch. I pulled out another photo. This one of Ray himself, hand resting awkwardly on Max's back. He barely looked at the camera. "Funny," I said. "You didn't look so tough then." That's when I laid out the rest. Every photo of Max, every scrap of proof that he existed, that I loved him, that Ray was lying to himself. I taped them to the wall by his bed, one after another, until the whole corner of the room was plastered with Max's face. Ray started yelling, tried to rip them down. His hands shook too badly, so he tore a couple and left the rest hanging crooked. "Stop this. Stop it right now." I just kept going. Quiet, deliberate, photo after photo, Max as a puppy, Max in the snow. Max curled up on my bed. By the time I finished, Ray was panting like he'd run a marathon. His eyes were wet, not from weakness, I realized, but from rage. "You're cruel," he hissed. "You're crueler than me." And maybe he was right. Because when I left, I didn't take the photos down. I left them there, covering the wall like an audience he couldn't escape. That night, the nurse called. She sounded rattled. "Your father's been agitated. He keeps saying the dog's in the room with him. He won't sleep." I told her to leave the pictures up. "Are you sure?" she asked, hesitant. "Yes," I said. "He needs the reminder." When I hung up, I realized my hands were shaking. Not from guilt, but from the rush. For the first time in years, I felt like I was getting some of my tears back. Not crying them, just reclaiming them. The facility called me back 3 days later. "We need you to come in," the head nurse said. Her voice was clipped, like she was trying to keep it professional but couldn't. When I got there, I knew why. Ray had ripped every one of those photos down during the night and shredded them into pieces. But it wasn't enough. He'd carried the scraps into the dining hall, stood on a chair in front of 30 residents and started screaming. "Look what he does to me!" he shouted, waving Max's torn face like a flag. "My own son tortures me with ghosts. He puts me in here like an old dog and then he rubs my nose in it." The residents were terrified. Some were crying. One woman in a wheelchair begged the staff to make him stop. A couple of family visitors just stared at me when I walked in, eyes hard, like I was the villain in the story. Ray saw me and went feral. He hurled the scraps at me, paper fluttering across the floor. "You killed him. You killed my dog. You made me give him up and now you make me live in his cage." His voice cracked, but he pushed through it, louder. "You're not my son. You're nothing. Nothing." The nurse tried to calm him, but he shoved her so hard she stumbled into a table. The officer who happened to be on site for security rushed in, restraining him before he could hurt anyone else. And in that chaos, something sharp and brutal hit me. This was exactly what I wanted. Not sympathy, not pity, exposure. For everyone to see what he was, what he'd always been. A man who destroyed everything he couldn't control. The administrator pulled me aside afterward. "We'll have to move him to memory care. He's disruptive, unsafe. You understand?" I nodded, keeping my voice steady. "Do it, and keep his new room facing the kennel." She blinked, caught off guard. But she didn't argue. When I walked past the dining hall again, I saw the residents still shaken, staff cleaning up scraps of Max's face off the floor. My father sat slumped in a wheelchair, restrained, head twitching like he was muttering to ghosts. For once, I didn't feel like the little boy left holding the leash. I felt like the one holding the chain. And I wasn't finished yet. Update 2. Well, I didn't expect to walk back in here so soon, but after what happened in the dining hall, I need to process. And yeah, a lot of you were right. I've officially crossed the line from distant son doing the responsible thing into guy actively making his dad's life hell. And I'm not sorry. For everyone DMing me saying I'm cruel, you didn't grow up in my house. You didn't hear the way he talked about Max. You didn't sit there as a kid listening to your dog cry from behind a locked door while your dad lit a cigarette and said, "Don't cry, men don't cry, dogs aren't people." He told me grief wasn't allowed. He told me softness was shame. So fine. Now he gets to choke on his own words in front of an audience. Some of you suggested I was risking his health by triggering him like this. Guess what? He risked mine for decades. You can call it petty, but standing there in that dining hall, watching him finally unravel where everyone could see, neighbors, nurses, strangers, it felt like I was finally balancing the scale. And let's talk about guilt, since half the comments are telling me I'll regret this when he's gone. Newsflash. I've already mourned him. Years ago. Every time he sat in silence instead of being a father. Every time he told me to harden up instead of holding me when I needed it. Every time I cried for Max in my head because I wasn't allowed to cry out loud. The man I'm dealing with now? He's not someone I can lose. He's already gone. What's left is this shadow. And for once, the shadow gets to feel small. Some of you made jokes. Set up a doghouse in the courtyard. Play barking sounds at night. Tempting, believe me. But I've got something else in mind, something cleaner. Something he can't ignore. Because if he's going to spend his last years looking out that window, then I'm going to make sure of one thing. Every time he looks, he remembers Max. Every single time. 2 nights after the dining hall incident, I went back to the home with a crate in the back of my truck. Inside was a wooden silhouette I'd spent all week carving in my garage. I'd used an old photo as the model, the one of Max standing tall, ears perked, tongue hanging. I cut the outline from plywood, painted it black, and weatherproofed it. Life-sized. When I carried it out to the kennel, the night guard gave me a look. "What's that?" "Decoration," I said simply. "Something for the residents. Place looks less empty with it." He shrugged and let me through. I set Max's shadow right in the middle of the kennel, propped firm so it wouldn't tip. Under the floodlights, it cast long, sharp edges across the grass, unmistakable. From Ray's room, it looked exactly like a dog standing at attention, waiting. The next morning, the calls started. "He won't stop staring out the window," the nurse said. "He keeps saying the dog came back." By afternoon, she sounded shaken. "He's talking to it now, begging it to forgive him." And that night, when I visited, I saw it myself. Ray was in the chair, eyes locked on the kennel. His lips were moving, whispering words I could barely catch. "Good boy. Come here, boy." I didn't mean it. He didn't even notice me in the room. Didn't turn when I said his name. His whole world was fixed on that silhouette, as if Max had been resurrected just to haunt him. For the first time in my life, I saw my father break. Not rage, not bluster. Break. Shoulders caved, hands trembling, voice cracking into sobs he'd sworn men weren't supposed to have. And I stood there, arms crossed, and let him cry. Because I remembered exactly what he told me at 11 years old. Real men don't cry over dogs. Now he was the one weeping, and the only witness was me. I didn't comfort him. Didn't say a word. Just left him there, crying to a ghost that wasn't real, a dog he never deserved, staring out at a kennel that would never let him forget. And I didn't cry. Not for him. Not anymore. The staff pulled me aside a week later. They told me he wasn't eating much, barely spoke to anyone. Just sat at the window waiting for a dog that would never come. One nurse whispered, "It's like you gave him back his conscience." Another said it was cruel. I didn't correct either of them. Both were true. When my aunt came to visit, she called me after. "Nate, why would you do this to him? He's sick. He's dying." I said, "He was already dead to me. This is just the funeral." She hung up on me. Haven't heard from her since. But I kept going back. Not to check on him. To make sure the silhouette stayed in place. Every time I found him the same way. Slouched in that chair, whispering apologies to the shadow of a dog he never had the decency to love. And every time, I felt the weight in my chest loosen just a little. One night, standing in that sterile room, I realized something. I wasn't doing this for revenge anymore. I was doing it for Max. For that boy in the back seat who had to hand over the only thing that ever made him feel safe. For the silence that was forced on me when I wanted to cry. Now the silence belonged to him. Last week, I went out to the kennel at dusk. The floodlights clicked on, bathing the silhouette in gold. From a distance, it looked alive. Tail straight, ears sharp, waiting. I rested my hand on the chain-link fence, half expecting to feel warm breath on the other side. "Good boy," I whispered. And for the first time in 24 years, my eyes burned. Just for a second. Not for my dad. For Max. For me. But I didn't cry. Because I realized I didn't need to anymore. The tears I was forced to bury as a child, I gave back to the man who buried them in me. Now he sits in his room, crying for a dog he never really knew, while I walk away free. And that's the difference between us. Real men don't cry over dogs? My father's been crying every night since.